In my own work, in fact, the trilogy that I'm currently working on for Monthly Review Press, entitled The Intellectual World War, Marxism versus the Imperial Theory Industry, where you see the kind of clear lines of demarcation. The first volume of that is entitled Who Paid the Pied Pipers of Marxism? Meaning, who paid the leading luminaries of the Western Marxist tradition who were attracting such large crowds, at least within the kind of petty bourgeois professional managerial class stratum, mainly targeting students, intellectuals, and those other influencers within the broader PMC. And to give you one example of why this political economic approach is so important, is that through my archival research and drawing on the archival research of others, it has become very clear that the robber barons, meaning the biggest capitalist families in the history of US capitalism, directly funded and supported Western Marxism. Now, in particular, the work of Herbert Marcuse, who is at the absolute center of a project run by the Rockefeller Foundation called the Marxism-Leninism Project. And the explicit goal of this project was to develop a version of Marxism that could be compatible with capitalism and that would denigrate actually existing socialism and any alternative outside of the capitalist world. In this project, Herbert Marcuse actually worked very closely with one of his best friends, who was a family friend, often came to his house. He was his strongest, or one of his strongest, along with William Langer, academic supporters, a man by the name of Philip Mosley, whose name has probably not gone down in history, but this is important because Mosley was a longtime, high-level CIA consultant with top secret security clearance. And if you know the history of the capitalist ruling class in the United States, or for that matter, in general within the imperial core, then it's very important to recognize that the bourgeois state that is operative within these countries is the state of the bourgeoisie, meaning that the capitalist ruling class, like interests such as the Rockefellers, have historically worked hand in glove with the bourgeois state, and in particular, its intelligence services, on high-level propaganda endeavors. Mosley was at the absolute center of that, was part of what's called the Princeton Consultancy Group, in which a group of intellectuals and national security state operatives, people from CIA, State Department, etc., met regularly at Princeton in order to do research for national intelligence estimates, which are the highest level of intelligence within the US government. The reason that I'm just touching on this example is because it demonstrates that Western Marxism, and this is just one example among others, Western Marxism was supported financially and promoted by the most reactionary elements of the capitalist ruling class, or some of them, as well as the bourgeois state and its intelligence services. This begs the question then, were these people stupid enough to promote a form of Marxism that was inimical to their own interests? Or were they, which seems much more plausible, promoting a form of Marxism that ultimately served their capitalist interests? I think that it's clear, and have argued quite strongly, that the latter is the case. This is important because one of the things that we need to recognize is that in the very rich history of Marxism, one thing that's very clear is that the capitalist ruling class and their bourgeois state managers have not been able to abolish it. They would prefer to eliminate it. They haven't been able to. Therefore, they had to, via a compromise, decide on different tactics for regulating it and dealing with it. Western Marxism is one of the principal solutions to that, meaning it's the development of a neutralized form of Marxism that can be sold and marketed as more advanced, more cutting edge, more avant-garde, more unorthodox, etc., than the Marxism linked to actually existing socialism, and can thereby be used as an ideological weapon of war against Marxists invested in the primacy of practice instead of the primacy of theory.